Good morning. Welcome to Unity Longmont Spiritual Center on the 13th of August, 2023. And we are blessed to have Christina Hildebrandt bring us her music. And I'm Dava Money, and I will be speaking about the mind, the brain, the body, and being divine and human, and whatever else shows up. So we'll start with Christina. Very tender. Thank you, Christina. It's beautiful. It's at this time that we go into prayer together by taking a breath. Beloved presence, everywhere present, we join today, our hearts, our minds in sync with each other, open to learning, to wisdom from within, open to our humanness and our divinity, and recognizing that in each other. For that and so many gifts, we express our gratitude. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. We'll hear from Christina again.
You never know what's going to come out, do you?
Thank you, Christina. Christina, what came out of Christina's mouth a moment ago was what I was planning to come out of mine. You never know what's going to come out, right? So I have a plan for this talk, and we know the old saying, man plans and God laughs. So I will trust that God is with us, God is within us, and we'll see what happens. I have been talking about grace lately, trying to figure out what it is and sharing some experiences I've had with it. And so, one of the aspects of grace, I believe, is that we are fully human and fully divine. And that can confuse me so much. It seems like a duality, doesn't it? But is it? One way to recognize our humanness is that we have a body, we have a brain, we have a mind. In psychology, it is thought that the mind emerges from the brain. The mind is what perceives for us, as does the brain, and they work together. And there's a newer thought by Daniel Siegel and others that the mind extends beyond our body, that the mind extends beyond ourself. Still confused? I am. But it makes sense to me that there is something that we experience that is larger than ourselves, something that connects each of us to each other. I know I've had the experience, and I imagine you have too, of being around other people, whether you know them or not, and just having a sense of some flow of energy between us, perhaps some recognition, universal recognition of, oh, I see you're similar to me or different from me. Maybe that's mind melding. I don't know. So our divine self is a little easier for me to understand intellectually because it is pure presence. I'm not saying I'm always aware of it, but when I am, it's glorious and it's home and it's restful. And so we know that pure presence is everything. That's what things are made of and contains all of that. Our first principle in unity is there is only one presence active in the universe and in myself. That is God, the good. We have lots of words to describe some of what I'm going to talk about today. And sometimes those words can be a little confusing. So as always, I ask that you take what serves you and leave the rest. I have for a very long time said confusion precedes enlightenment, because that's often been my own experience. And I can't guarantee I will bring you any enlightenment. I can probably guarantee I bring my own confusion. The Zen master Dogen said, enlightenment is like the moon reflected on the water. The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. Although its light is wide and great, the moon is reflected even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in one dewdrop on the grass. I have been drawn to Zen since the 70s, and part of what intrigues me and fulfills me about it is it's ineffable. You're not necessarily meant to understand it upon the first hearing. But something about Zen sayings, Zen beliefs stirs something in me, some kind of recognition of, aha, there is a truth there. And maybe I don't want to pursue it too directly or too hard, because what gets in the way? My mind. But there's some other part of me that gets these sayings. The divine part of me trusts the unfolding of life. The human part of me, my ego, does not necessarily trust the process or the outcome. My human self can worry. My divine self trusts. My human self often feels weak. My divine self is always strong. My divine self, your divine self, is made up of faith, wisdom, love, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, faith, elimination or release, and life. Those are the 12 powers that Charles Fillmore identified. They are attributes of God. And because we are made in God's image, we have those attributes. They are stronger in some people than others. They are in everyone. Our mind is necessary to navigate this world that we live in, this physical world. Our senses are innate and necessary to experience the physical. Our divinity can be a haven during that journey, especially when I am weary of navigation and overwhelmed by my senses. Presence is a restful place. I think, and again, what I'm sharing today is just my stuff, my thoughts. Please take what serves you. But I think as human beings, we're calling for some kind of healing in our lives. And I'm going to define that healing as an alignment of our body, mind, and spirit. I live part of my life with those parts disparate from each other, separated from each other. The few times that I have experienced an alignment were precious. They were timeless. They were flow. So often, this humanness and this divinity seem like a duality. And in dualities, it seems to me like it's an either or. But I suspect it's really a both and. If it's a duality, what separates them? I believe it's our consciousness that separates them. And the evolution of our consciousness will bring us to an experience and an understanding of their unity. I don't know about you, but I just have glimpses of that. I want to live there. I want to live where there's that unity. That's a paradox. They feel separate, but they're united. Carolyn Mace, one of my favorite teachers, says, God lives in the paradox. So pay attention to the paradoxes in your life. There is ultimately no separation between our humanness and our divinity, no separation between ourselves and our world, no separation between our world and all that is. So let's go back to figuring out what is mind. Buddhist teachings say that mind manifests moment to moment as sense impressions. sense impressions. So I taste this, I smell this, I see this, and mental phenomena that are continuously changing. What are mental phenomena? For me, sometimes it's surprise, sorrow, confusion, a lot of confusion today, worry, gratitude. One of the things we know from Buddhism and from our own life is all things are impermanent. So all of those mental phenomena are just shifting through. And sometimes as humans, part of our struggle comes from we're trying to grab a hold of that. Oh, that felt good, so let me hold on to it. Let me claim it. Let me be it. It's impossible, and it just leads to suffering. So in Tibetan Buddhism, the mind is the knowing nature and is non-material. So again, see how we get into some confusion. The mind is an expression of the brain, it's non-material, it's all-knowing. And yet we are aware of some differences. We have that inner mind that chatters, that monkey mind, that's like blah, 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 all day long. We might even wake up in the middle of the night to blah, 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 blah. And we take it so seriously. I'm afraid so-and-so doesn't like me. Gosh, we take that seriously. I'm afraid. We take that seriously. We forget that too is impermanent. It's going to pass. And we forget that isn't who we are. That's just an aspect of our humanness. So Oliver Goldhill says, the mind uses the brain. That kind of sounds lovely to me. The mind uses the brain. The brain has a job and the mind uses it. Yet it is inseparable from the brain. Uh-oh, more confusion here. Another duality or non-duality and paradox. So I invite you in this moment to think, how do you define those words? How do you define brain? How do you define mind? How do you define human? How do you define divine? I don't think there's any wrong or right way to do that. So the brain plays an incredible role. Again, that's where our five senses stem from. In unity, we call that sense consciousness. It keeps us grounded here to the earth. It keeps us grounded in these human moments. It gives us information. Then what is it that looks at that information and translates it for us? Is that still the brain or is that the mind? I'm going to guess the mind. And one of the reasons I guess that is our mind can be changed. So if we have a habit of perceiving certain things in a way that causes us suffering, we can actually engage in practices to shift the perception, the mind, which we now know changes the physical brain. If we have a habit of thinking negatively all the time, maybe we've been taught that, maybe we've just fallen into that habit, our brain will change the way it uses neurotransmitters, and we will suffer more. The good news is the reverse is true too. When we suffer, we can explore very gently, very non-judgmentally, what am I thinking? Is it true? What else can I think that would be useful to me? In my own life, that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of practice. And for myself and many others, one of the very useful practices is meditation, because it is in meditation that I most become familiar with my thoughts. Because thoughts race. As we know, we have up to 20,000 thoughts a day. And most of them are repeats. They're just habitual. And 90% of them are self-referential. It's all about me. I. So because they go so fast during the day, I am aware of some and I'm reacting to all. However, in meditation, things appear to slow down enough that I will catch the thoughts. And at that time or another, I can say, is that thought useful to me? So again, what is mind to you? How do you define it? In Zen vocabulary, there's a word, mushin, which means no mind or detachment of mind, complete freedom from dualistic thinking. Sounds pretty heavenly. To be in that place where our monkey mind is not directing everything, that we may just observe it. It's still going to be active if we're alive and breathing. But to be in that place of non-duality, to recognize, yeah, there's monkey mind, there's me, there's all, and it's all somehow woven together. We just finished reading Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment. And someone on Friday, as we finished the book, reminded us that the mind is not your spiritual advisor. I love that. The mind is not your spiritual advisor. What is? I think it's that presence piece, that presence that is hard to describe, but yet is so known when we experience it. There is a lovely quote, "To offer no resistance to life is to be in a state of grace and lightness. This state is then no longer dependent upon things being in a certain way, good or bad. Good or bad is a preference. That's a decision we make. It seems almost paradoxical, yet when your inner dependency on form, that which is going on, is gone, the general condition of your life, the outer forms tend to improve greatly. Life flows with ease." So there's a lot said in that quote from Eckhart Tolle, one of those being that what we are thinking is manifesting in our own personal world. An example being, nobody likes me, I'm going to go eat worms, right? Remember that from childhood? And then you go to school and nobody likes you because of the way we're behaving. Again, that thought is changing the brain changes the behavior. So let's remember, most people like us. So Michael Singer's book is a description of a lot of experiences that he had when it appeared that the universe invited him to do something he would not normally do. And he agreed to it. Initially, there was some resistance that he became aware of, but over time, even as those invitations got seemingly more difficult, he said, yes, yes. How do we say yes to life's invitations? So one way of looking at his book is not only did he surrender to each of those moments, but ultimately he surrendered his ego. We all have this ego that thinks it is right. You know, it's the part of us that can stamp our feet and have a temper tantrum and say, no, this is the way it's going to go. It's not our enemy, but it's an important part of us. And I think that all parts of us want to come home, want to be seen, witnessed, loved, cared for. I work with parts a lot in my classes and with people in coaching. And what I see in myself and others is that we may have a life experience that is too hard for a particular part to deal with. And so one of the ways that part deals with it is to be suppressed or repressed. But they don't go away completely. They're still part of us. We are, I think it was Walt Whitman said, I am multitudes. We are all multitudes of parts. And I think healing is inviting those parts, loving those parts, and having a sense of integration into one being that is part human and part divine. No, wholly divine. So when we can be quiet enough, whole enough to hear that voice that I've talked about the last few Sundays, magic happens. And I was remembering just a very small example that in the 90s, I said to my girlfriend when I woke up one morning, we have to go to Terra Christa. She didn't question me. She knew me. She said, okay, we're going. What time? So we went to this metaphysical store in Vienna, Virginia, and we walked around upstairs, downstairs, looked at everything. And I could not find that recognition within that said, oh, this is why you're here. And we walked out of the store and looked across the street. And there was my girlfriend's old friend from Pennsylvania that they had not seen each other in 15 years. And that woman, Carol, is to this day a good friend of mine. So it's a small example, but it happened because when that voice said, go to Terra Christa, we went. So as always, I invite each of us to pay attention, get still enough to hear that voice. We meet people, we have experiences because of that voice. And each experience is an initiation to life. Initiation brings us to belonging in this world, this physical world, belonging in the greater world. So another question that's come up for me is, what is our responsibility to life, to this life force, to this living beingness that everything is? You know, one way is looking at responsibility as, okay, I'm responsible to surrender to those invitations. And I know that especially because of our divinity, we are also creators. Do we have a responsibility to co-create with this universe? Do we have a responsibility to dance as partners with this universe? I think we do. I ask you to consider for yourself. And how do we do that? How do we co-create? It's been a big question, I know, in New Thought and New Age since at least the 80s. So you probably know how we do that. Our founder, Charles Fillmore, has defined the divine God, I am, as divine mind. And that how the creation of everything came about was divine mind, idea, expression. So there is all that is, then there's an idea, and then it manifests. And he suggests because of our own divinity, we have mind, lowercase m, idea, expression. So think about the common teacup. It wasn't always in existence, but someone had an idea and then did the work to express it. So are there times that we are invited by life to have an idea and express it? Carolyn Mays talks about new ideas are dropped into many people in the world at the same time, but typically only one person follows it to the end. So one person invented the telephone, one person developed and engineered the idea of train or movement or motor. But the idea may have dropped into many people's minds. So I know for myself, I've had a lot of download ideas of, oh, that's a brilliant thing. And then I get distracted and don't do it. Or I get scared to do it. I had a delightful experience a few months ago when I was walking at Golden Ponds, and I had a download of offering a highly sensitive person healing class. And one of the things that was so precious to me is boom, 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 boom. 8 themes came up, separate, complete, for 8 different weeks of teaching an interactive class. Well, darn, I did it. I followed through, and I am teaching that class for about the 4th time now to 10 wonderful women. I don't doubt that that idea landed in other people. So I hope I remember to follow through on those divine ideas when they come, but knowing myself, I probably won't follow them all. So I love the Hicks, Esther and Jerry Hicks. Esther channels Abraham, and a lot of you know that work. And I got to see them in Silver Spring, Maryland in about 2007 for a weekend. And it was so interesting to see Esther shift when she started to bring out Abraham and this very different voice, this very different demeanor, this very different language. And one of the things that stuck with me was Abraham said, if you are struggling paddling upriver, drop the paddle. Drop the paddle. Don't fight the flow. Go with the flow. Drop the paddle. How many times do we keep paddling? I am stubborn as hell. And I can paddle, paddle, paddle until I get exhausted. And maybe there's a gift in being exhausted sometimes because a breakthrough might come through. So the Hicks teach how we create or co-create. The first thing is ask. And what is asking? Asking is having a desire. In unity, one of the attributes of love, divine love, is desire. It is the wanting of something. And so I love this expression that they use of, you will have rockets of desire. And the universe responds to that. The universe provides. That's not our work, the provision of it. What is our work is the allowing of it, the acceptance of it, to recognize it, to open up, to say, okay, thank you, thank you. So ask, allow, receive. Let's play with that and see what happens in our lives. I'm not going to take the time now to talk about the importance of emotions, but simply say that our emotions each carry a message. And so when we are creating something, the emotion itself tells us if we are going in the right direction, if we're going in the direction we want to. How do we change that emotion? Go to the mind, change the thinking. So I'm so blessed to have had a teacher who was taught by Thich Nhat Hanh. She came over from Vietnam with him as a refugee. And so I'm really drawn to his wisdom. And one of the things he said is to be beautiful means to be yourself. Be yourself. You don't need to be accepted by others. You need to accept yourself. When you are born a lotus flower, be a lotus flower. Don't be a magnolia flower. If you crave acceptance and recognition from others and try to change your life to fit what they want you to be, you will suffer all your life. True happiness and true power lie in understanding yourself, accepting yourself, having confidence in yourself. Think about that. That is a creative process, isn't it? So sometimes these seemingly magical moments come without being bidden, but I think that it's very helpful to be in the flow in order to have them, in order to recognize them. And I'd like to finish by sharing one moment on July 1st, 1994. My oldest daughter and I were sitting on my new deck in my townhouse. She was to my right, 6 inches away, and we were enjoying the day and each other's company. We both knew that my father had been ill. He wasn't, I don't think, on our minds in that moment. But very suddenly, a blue sphere of light, this large, came between us, and we looked at each other and said, "Grandpa Dave." And we knew that he had passed in that moment. It was phenomenal to have that experience. It was even more phenomenal for me to have that experience with a loved one. And sure enough, I talked to my stepmother that day, and that is when he had passed. So let's be open to these experiences. Let's listen to that inner voice. Let's allow ourselves to be in the flow. Let's co-create when we can. Let's surrender when we must. And let's be and love ourselves and each other. And so it is. And we will hear from Christina.
Oop. So I'm going to play a tongue drum. And as it is with Hester the harp, I have no idea what will happen.
And so it is. Thank you, Christina. So music is so amazing because everything is vibration, including ourselves. And so when we hear music, when we allow it, it alters our vibration. Let us notice that. So thank you, Christina, for that transformation and alteration. It's at this time that we go into our donation of love and light with the recognition that we are love and light. And I'd like to share something with you that I found this morning. This is part of the universe. Now, what strikes me is that question mark. I don't know if you can see it, but as I was pondering all these things this morning, this came up in the news on my phone. So I invite you, if it serves you, with a gentle gaze, just allow yourself to see this in any way that has meaning for you, and to notice all the light, and to be aware of all the love, and know that we are a part of this. And so we'll take just a couple moments in silence. So in our donation of love and light, we are often focusing on giving that to others. Let us remember that we are being given that also, all the time, love and light, and that we are that. And we will finish with music from Christina.